Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, Larry Page, Sergey Brin. 7 of the 10 richest people in the world made their money by starting high-growth technology companies. If you want to follow in their footsteps, but you don't yet have an idea to work on, this video is for you. I'll guide you through the idea generation process and share a worksheet you can download to develop your own ideas. I'm Ryan Juni. I've started 5 technology companies worth more than $300 million, and I've invested in dozens of others. I sold my first company to YouTube more than 10 years ago, and then I worked at Google. One of my companies created software that's now being used by the world's largest manufacturers in more than 80 countries. I used to be a part-time partner at Combinator, the famous startup accelerator that launched Airbnb, Stripe, DoorDash, Coinbase, Dropbox, and many more. And now, I'm bringing my hard-won lessons to YouTube to help entrepreneurs like you bring your gifts to the world. This is the second video in my series on starting high-growth, venture-scale technology companies. If you haven't watched the first video, which is an overview of the entire startup creation process, I'll link it here. In this video, we're going to get deep into step 1. Idea generation. This video is quite long, so I've included links to the different chapters below. Feel free to jump around and even watch it at 2x speed if you prefer. You'll probably want to bookmark this video to return to later, and I'll be giving you a worksheet you can download as you go through the idea generation process. Before we get into it, I want to point out that this series is focused on venture scale startups. This means companies that have the potential to be worth $1 billion or more. This is not about how to make 6 or 7 figures selling online. You'll find tons of other great YouTubers explaining how to do that. This is not the 4-hour work week. This is the 400-hour work week. At least it can feel that way sometimes. All joking aside, I'm not advocating working unhealthy hours at the expense of the rest of your life, as you'll see from some of my other videos. But you should only embark on this journey if it truly is your passion and your deepest purpose. It's going to require a ton of work, but hopefully it won't feel like work. By the way, if you're not yet clear on your deepest purpose, you should check out this other video of mine. We'll begin by addressing the question, should you start a tech company? I'll then walk you through these sections, which are all linked in the description in case you want to jump around. The importance of a good idea. What is an idea? How to generate ideas, how to filter ideas, and some final words of caution. Let's get into it. Startups are hard, really hard. The chance of failure is high, the workload is astronomical, much more than having a regular job. And success or failure ultimately depends on you, the founder. You have no one else to turn to or blame. That said, the upside is huge. Before you go too far down the path of starting a company, ask yourself, why are you doing it? Let me list some of the common reasons people have for starting a company, and I'll tell you whether they're good or not. First, because it's cool to be a founder. This is not a good reason. Many people want to start a company just so they can tell the world they're an entrepreneur. They don't really care about the idea, they just want to start something. Being a founder may seem cool and fun and glamorous. It's usually not. This is how Hollywood portrayed the founding of Facebook. These are actual photos of the founding of Facebook, and Airbnb, and Dropbox, and Stripe. You get the idea. You better love long days sitting in your apartment in front of a computer screen. Another reason? Because I want to be rich. Some founders are very rich, many are not. If your goal is to become rich, there are other paths with a higher expected value, the amount you could make multiplied by your chance of making it. If you really care about becoming ultra mega rich, like the founders in the beginning of this video, then it's true. Startups are the best way to do that. The chance of hitting that outcome is very low. You'll need tremendous resilience in the face of repeated failure. If you believe you'll do this for a few years, make some money, and then go and do what you're really passionate about, just know that the odds are against you. The stories you read of founders getting rich in 3 years, the odds are 1 in 1,000. At best, likely much worse. I'm planning a future video where I break down how much money I actually made as a founder in the first 10 years of my entrepreneurial career, so subscribe to be notified of that. Another reason? I want freedom. I don't want a boss. I get it. It's a huge driving force for me as well, but here's the reality. Instead of having one boss and a well-defined process for taking time off, you get thousands of bosses, your employees and your customers, and you can't take time off until you build the systems to handle all of the decisions when you aren't there, and this can take a very long time to create. As a founder, you spend your day putting out fires. You're jumping off a cliff and assembling the plane on the way down. Don't just take it from me. Here's Elon.
I mean, there's a friend of mine who's got a good phrase for doing a startup is like it's like eating glass and staring into the abyss. So it's if you go into it expecting this, it's going to be just fun, you will be disappointed. It's not. It's quite painful. It's much easier to get a job somewhere.
But you will be in charge of your own destiny, and for many of you, that's a reason enough. Another reason, I want to solve this problem. I just can't get it out of my mind. This is getting close to the right answer. It's necessary, but probably not sufficient. Make sure you first consider if there are better ways to contribute to solving this problem than starting a company. Maybe joining a company with more money and influence will get it done sooner, or maybe it would make more sense as a non-profit. Final reason, I don't have a choice. I can't not do it. Bingo. This is the only valid reason for starting a high-growth technology company. Whenever I'm coaching a first-time entrepreneur, I ask them if there's anything else they could do with their life and career right now that would make them happy. If there is, I encourage them to go and do that. While I would love to see more founders and more startups in the world, I just know from experience that if there's a compelling alternative, it will be too easy to give up and switch to that when things are tough, and things will get tough. If you talk to people about your startup idea and they try to discourage you, tell you to pick something easier, safer, and then you ignore them and go home and work on your startup until you pass out from exhaustion, then you're probably destined to be a founder. So if you're ready to work on this for 10 years, if you know that the majority of that time will be a painful grind, if you can't not do it, you have a passion so deep it's in your soul, it's your karmic purpose, your reason for being on earth, right now, if you're prepared to keep going even when you're chewing glass and staring into the abyss, then let's continue discussing what makes a good startup idea. It's popular in the startup world to say that ideas don't matter and that it's all about execution. In fact, I've said this many times myself, but it's an oversimplification and not entirely true. There's an unspoken part to this statement, an implicit assumption that if the idea turns out to be bad, then the team will simply pivot to a new idea. Therefore, if you make a bet on a good team operating in a fast-growing market, all that matters is they execute well. But like I mentioned in my previous video, pivoting is difficult, and if the idea is really bad, you won't be able to pivot your way out of it without a hard reset, which is an incredible waste of time, money, and morale. So please put in some serious effort up front to coming up with a good idea. Imagine a spectrum. On one end, you wait for the perfect idea before you get started. On the other end, you jump on the first idea that you think of. You want to be somewhere in the middle. You want a good starting point, but understand that ideas morph over time. Ideas and execution have a multiplier effect. If you have a weak idea and great execution, you won't produce a big company. But if you have a great idea and weak execution, you also won't produce a big company. A great idea with great execution, that's where the magic happens. And yes, great execution is probably 10 times more important than a great idea. We'll be talking all about execution in the rest of this video series. And just so I'm completely honest with you guys, there is a third factor in this equation, and it's luck. You will need luck to succeed, but without everything else in place, the luck factor doesn't matter. Now, when I say idea, I want to be clear what I'm talking about. An idea includes a bunch of things. Primarily, it's the problem you're solving and who has that problem. Then it's your unique solution to that problem, a clear articulation of why now, a business model, a go-to-market strategy, and a whole lot more that you'll flesh out over time. In this idea generation stage, it's okay if you haven't figured out all of these components. Just know that a startup idea is a large and complex thing that you will progressively build and refine as you go through the quintessential startup playbook. Now, let's talk about how to come up with good startup ideas. I like to think of this in two phases: generating ideas and then filtering those ideas. The reason to separate these two phases is because your brain needs to operate differently. Another way to think about it is open mode versus closed mode, or designers often call it divergent thinking versus convergent thinking. When you're sourcing ideas, you're in open mode, doing divergent thinking. This is classic brainstorming where any idea is welcome no matter how crazy it sounds. You're trying to come up with as many ideas as you can. Your mind is in a state of unfocused play and your goal is to discover things that are new and interesting. The best ideas often come out of left field. They sound crazy at first, but there's a little voice in the back of your head saying, wait a minute, this could actually work. Once you've generated as many ideas as you can, you'll switch into closed mode or convergent thinking. Here your mind becomes highly focused, critical and skeptical, looking for reasons why those ideas might not be good. Your goal is to narrow down to the best idea. We'll come back to that in the next section. While you're in open mode, generating ideas, it's important to turn off your unconscious filters. Don't worry, you'll turn them back on again soon, but for now, you don't want to miss a potentially great idea by accidentally filtering it out too early. Here are some specific filters you should turn off. That sounds really hard. Counterintuitively, startups that are hard can often have a greater chance of succeeding. This is because big, bold, audacious ideas attract the best people to work for you and the best investors to fund you. Derivative companies that copy an existing idea with minor improvements, they don't excite people. They don't attract top talent and they don't motivate your team to work hard enough to succeed. And at some level, all startups are really hard anyway, so you may as well swing for the fences. Another filter is, that sounds really boring. A boring or unsexy market could mean that most people are ignoring it and therefore it's quite lucrative. One of my companies tackled the really boring space of industrial factory workflows and it's now worth several $100 million. Of course, you'll still need to find a way to approach a boring market in a way that connects with your passion and purpose. For me, it was the prospect of bringing innovative new technology to people whose jobs were really hard. A third common filter is, there are competitors. Look, if there were no competitors, there's a good chance that it's not a real problem. The existence of competitors lets you know it's a real market. You might still be able to find a way to segment that market and come up with something unique enough to build a big business. Now that you've temporarily paused your filters, let's talk about strategies to generate ideas. The first fundamental rule is that you should be thinking about problem first, solution second. It's fun to come up with new technology ideas, but if they aren't built to solve an explicit problem, then you can end up with what we call a solution in search of a problem. Let me illustrate this with a story. I started my third company back in 2013. We called it Wearable Intelligence. Google Glass had just been released, and my co-founders and I were excited about the potential of wearable technology. We knew some people at Google and got early access to the hardware, and our business idea was to try and find applications for Google Glass in the business world, since Google was promoting it as a consumer device. If this sounds like a solution in search of a problem, it was. We ran our first pilots initially in hospital emergency rooms where doctors used Google Glass to pull up medical records while treating critical patients. The doctors liked it, and we actually helped save some lives. But when it came time to expand beyond the pilot, it turned out the pain wasn't strong enough for the hospital to allocate budget to us. So we switched markets and ran some pilots with some large industrial companies, with their factory workers using Google Glass to follow standard operating procedures while building and servicing complex equipment. They liked it too. It was a huge improvement over the clipboards and paper they were used to using, but there were problems here as well. The operating environment was very loud, so the voice recognition didn't work well, and the battery life of Google Glass was just too short to last a full shift. Luckily, at this point, we had an epiphany. We had discovered a clear problem. Factory workers were making lots of mistakes with their work, leading to safety and quality issues because they were still operating with outdated tools like paper and pen. We came in with a super futuristic, voice-activated, wearable technology solution from Silicon Valley when the problem could actually have been solved more simply by digitizing the work using well-proven and robust technology like smartphones and tablets. So, we pivoted our software to run on phones and tablets, we renamed the company, and the rest is history. Today that company is worth more than $250 million. In this case, the outcome was a good one, but it could have easily failed, and in any case, we would have saved 18 months and a lot of money if we started out by focusing on the problem first. So back to idea generation. I'll walk you through 9 techniques to spark a flow of ideas during the generation stage, and as usual, I have a worksheet you can use as you're going through this process linked in the description below. The 9 techniques are things you want, domain expertise, industry insiders, things that recently became possible, emerging trends, things you would work on for 10 years, cross-pollination, translating to a new market, and organic idea generation. We'll start with the easiest, which is things that you personally want. A better way to phrase this is, what things do you wish other people would build for you? This helps you get around the unconscious filter of an idea being too hard or you not having the expertise to build it. It's even better if your friends or those with similar interests to you also want this thing. You could start out building it just for this small group and then realize the group is bigger than you thought, or there are adjacent groups that you could expand into. Many great companies started this way. Mark Zuckerberg built Facebook because he wanted to use it personally. This technique does tend to generate more B2C ideas than B2B ideas. Ask yourself, what are you and your team exceptionally good at? Where do you have an edge, an unfair advantage? What secrets do you know that other founders may not? Think back through your past jobs or your studies. What did you learn that other people generally don't know? What problems did you discover? Were there in-house tools your employer had built that other companies might need? This technique can lead you more towards B2B ideas. If you're earlier in your career and you don't have past jobs or studies to draw from, you can still discover secrets by talking to industry insiders. There are thousands of people who have been working middle or upper management jobs in almost any industry, and they'd love to tell you about all their problems if you'll help solve them. Don't underestimate how much people love talking to smart, ambitious founders who are optimistic about the future. Your conversation may be the highlight of their week. These people have probably thought about solutions too, but keep in mind you're searching for the underlying problem. Seek to deeply understand the pain point and then come up with a solution on your own. It takes a certain type of founder mindset to come up with good and scalable solutions, and the industry insiders you speak with may not have this skill set. Do this a dozen times in a particular industry, and you'll have more than enough insight to formulate good ideas in that space. You can also bring on these industry insiders as advisors in your company for a few basis points of equity, and not only that, they can become your early evangelist customers and champions. If you want to try this technique, but you don't even know where to begin, you can look for industries that are obviously broken, or simply look for industries that you are already naturally curious about. Trust your gut, follow your interest. Great startup ideas emerge when something big changes in the world, where things that were previously not possible become possible. In particular, you should look for regulatory change and new technology platforms. One of my companies is building products in the digital health space because over the last 3 years, telemedicine regulations in the US have been rapidly changing and new business models are now possible. It's a good idea to keep up with regulations that are changing in your country or your target industry. Also be sure to notice when new technology platforms emerge and become popular, and then brainstorm what new things can be built on top of those. YouTube initially became popular because people used it to post videos on one of the first social networks, MySpace. Instagram initially became popular because people wanted to share good-looking filtered photos on Facebook. And there are tons of mobile gaming and app companies that appeared after the iPhone launched. As an added bonus, this technique will help you answer the why now question when you're pitching your idea to investors. A good answer to this question will get investors very excited. Like with new technology platforms, pay attention to emerging trends in general, especially amongst the younger generation, and then extrapolate what that could mean for the future. What things are Gen Z doing that might seem weird to older people? For example, now, in 2021, short-form video is growing incredibly quickly, and we're also seeing live group audio chat taking off on apps like Clubhouse. Brainstorm, what does this mean for the future of social apps? This technique is more personal. What would you be excited to work on for the next 10 years or more? If you're interested in creating a very successful venture scale startup, it will take at minimum 7 years and likely longer. If you haven't watched my video on uncovering your deepest purpose yet, check it out. It goes over some questions like these that you can ask yourself to discover what would you work on for the next 10 years. It's possible that the thing you're excited to work on for 10 years is not a venture scale business. It might make more sense as a small business or even a non-profit. If this is the case, you'll need to do some deep soul searching to determine whether you should create a venture scale startup. Maybe you should take an easy job that pays the bills while you pursue your passion on the side. Without a deep passion for the startup you're building, you will require tremendous discipline to succeed, more discipline than most people have. Unique startup ideas often appear at the intersection of two or more fields. A applying what you know from one field to the other. If your unique interests and career path has led you to become knowledgeable about two fields that don't commonly go together, pay attention to this intersection. As a side note, this is also the same thing that will help you build an audience online. The more uncommon this intersection, the easier it will be to attract people who are also interested in your unique niche. Personally, I've built deep expertise in the world of venture scale startups from my last 15 years in Silicon Valley, but I've also spent the last decade working with some of the world's greatest spiritual teachers. This intersection of entrepreneurship and spirituality is very interesting to me and hopefully to some of you too. Look for opportunities to take an idea that is working well in one market to another market. For example, you can take something from one geographic market to another. Many successful companies have been created by taking ideas that first became successful in the US to other markets in Europe or Asia. And more recently, ideas that have been working well in China have been translated to the US. Also, think about translating ideas from the consumer world to the business world. Instant messaging and group chatting was very popular amongst consumers before the rise of enterprise companies like Slack. A word of caution, you may have seen a trend in the startup world of pitches like Uber for pets or Airbnb for boats. This format of X for Y, where X is a recently successful company, often makes for a catchy pitch and can even attract funding, but less often makes for a successful business because there is a risk that you end up building a solution in search of a problem. I saved the best for last. The final technique is simply to let ideas come to you organically over time. It takes the longest, but it yields the best result. You begin by setting your intention to start a venture scale company, and you educate yourself by watching videos like this series to understand what that means. By preparing your mind and orienting your subconscious filters, you'll naturally start to notice things throughout the day that could be great startup ideas, problems in the world that you previously ignored or took for granted. Next, you'll need a good system to capture and process these ideas. One entrepreneur I know kept a note on his phone that he called the bug list, as in a list of bugs with the world that need to be fixed. I personally keep a network of notes in Roam Research, and if I come up with a new idea when I'm on the move, which I often do, I open up my phone and I dictate a voice note that gets added to Roam. To summarize, learn how to notice good ideas, then let the good ones occur to you and capture them. After you spend some time in the idea generation mode, using some or all of the techniques I've talked about, your notebook will be overflowing with potential startup ideas. So next, we'll talk about filtering for the good ones. Switching from open mode to closed mode, from divergent thinking to convergent thinking, you will now welcome back your mind's critical skills of judgment and discrimination. Your goal is to surface the best one or two ideas from your list that you want to take to the next step. Remember, the quintessential startup playbook has 10 steps, and this is only step 1. It's the first filter. I'm going to walk you through 9 characteristics of a good idea that you can use when filtering. Why is it always 9 items? The last list had 9 items too. Think of these as heuristics. They're not hard and fast rules, and you'll probably be able to think of counterexamples for each one, but they will help you compare ideas against each other. And don't forget, there's a worksheet you can download to help you through this process. The heuristics are potential monopoly, small market growing fast, unpopular and right, different in an important way, defensible, now is the time, easy to explain, you already know people want it, and founder market fit. The best ideas often start out in a small market and have a monopoly from the very beginning. It's better to own the entire market when it's small and then grow with that market, maintaining your monopoly position, than it is to have a small slice of an already large and competitive market. So it's okay if your market is not big at first, but it does need to be growing fast. It does need to be a huge market in 10 years. Look at how fast the market is growing today and determine whether it will keep growing or top out. As an example, Coinbase was founded in 2012 when very few people knew about Bitcoin and the market for trading cryptocurrency was very small. They became a monopoly, at least in the US, and grew with the market. Today, the crypto market is large and the potential future market is massive. If it succeeds, it could replace all money. Another example is Airbnb. When they started, they helped people rent out their couch or spare bedroom, a small market, but in the future, they could replace the entire hotel industry. The best type of startup ideas are both unpopular and right. If your idea is popular, then you'll have too many competitors to ever create a monopoly, or maybe even gain traction in the first place. You'll likely have a lot of well-funded VC-backed startups spending lots of money to go after the same customers as you. So you want to start out looking for unpopular ideas based on secrets that you know and other founders don't. However, a lot of ideas are unpopular for a reason. They're just bad ideas. So you need to also make sure your idea is a good one, unpopular and right. It's human nature to follow trends and what's popular. So if you train yourself to filter for unpopular ideas that just might be true, you'll have the time and space to build a big company before others catch on. You need to make sure that your product is different to what came before it in some important way. Ideally, you want to have a unique insight that no one else working on the problem has. If you were going to build a new search engine or social network or productivity software, it's not enough to be just a little bit better. Even if your product is the best, the friction for people to switch is often too great. You have to be different in such a big and important way that you either open a new market segment of customers or people simply can't resist switching to you. Also consider that many ideas have been tried before and failed. If your idea falls into this category, make sure you have a good answer to how your product or the market is now sufficiently different than it was last time. Once everyone realizes that you have a great idea, competitors will appear. You need to make sure you can defend against competition and maintain your dominant position in the market. Your business should be difficult to replicate. Consider defensibility both in the short term and the long term. In the short term, how will you maintain and ideally increase your lead over competitors? Executing well is table stakes. You need to be faster than everyone else, but it's better if you have some structural advantage too. Examples are network effects, important customer relationships, unique people on your team, patented intellectual property, access to lots of capital, things like that. In the long term, you need to think about how your market will evolve and how your company will evolve with it to maintain its lead. Be careful not to build something with a limited life. For example, many companies were founded in 2020 to tackle problems arising with the COVID pandemic. How will these businesses evolve once the pandemic is behind us? For every business idea you're considering, ask yourself, why now? Why wasn't this possible 2 years ago? Why will 2 years in the future be too late? You have to get your market timing just right. Many good ideas have failed because they were too early and the market wasn't ready, only to be tried again years later, sometimes even by the same team, and achieve massive success. If your idea was possible 2 years ago, and for some reason it hasn't been done yet, ask yourself why. Most likely there are companies that tried it and they learned something that you haven't learned yet, which may mean it's a bad idea. That said, it's also possible that those companies didn't have the critical, unique insight that you have. The best ideas can be explained to a friend in one sentence. If it takes you more than that, your idea is probably too complicated. We'll talk more about MVPs in video 6 of this series, but just remember that your initial product should do one relatively small thing very well. You can expand on that after you achieve success. If it's hard to explain your idea, it could also mean that you haven't spent enough time clarifying it in your own mind. Try and develop a pitch that fits in an old school tweet, 140 characters. A strong signal of a good idea is that you already know that people want what you're building. Maybe you want it for yourself and your friends. That's a good start, especially if there are a lot of other people like you. But if you're not building something for yourself, you'll want to get very, very close to your customers to understand how badly they want it. I'll be talking a lot more about this in video 5 of the series. This last filter is very important to increase your chances of success. Founder market fit means that the idea is a good match for what you're good at and what you enjoy working on. Don't pick an idea just because you think it could make a lot of money if you're going to hate working on it every day for the next 10 years. It's best if you have a natural motivation and passion to work on the idea coming from somewhere deep inside, like you can't not do it. And you'll want to make sure that your team is the best possible team to be working on this idea so that you won't be beaten by another team competing with you. You want co-founders and advisors that fill in any gaps. The next video in this series will be dedicated to team formation. As you think about the type of idea that would be a good match for you and your team, there are a few rules of thumb. If your team is smart and loves solving challenging problems, it's probably best to focus on new ideas that haven't been done before. If, however, your main skill is executing really fast, you may also consider copycat ideas where you simply out-execute the competition. This is easier when the competitors are still relatively small themselves, or for example, if you're copying an idea that worked well in one country and taking it to another country. If you want to work on a consumer or a SaaS idea, your life is going to be centered around distribution. You'll spend most of your time optimizing ads and conversion funnels and retention rates, things like that. If you want to work on an enterprise software idea, your life is going to be centered around building and managing a sales team and closing deals. If you really want to focus on solving deep technical problems, you'll want to pick a startup doing something deeply technical, like synthetic biology or AI-based drug discovery or quantum computing or robotics or new manufacturing techniques, things like that. But remember, you're building a business and not just an R&D project. So that's how to generate and filter ideas. We've covered a lot here. Your goal is to pick your top 1 or 2 ideas to take to the next stage of validation, which we'll cover in step 3 of the Quintessential Startup Playbook. Before we wrap up, let me share a few words of caution. First, don't hide your idea. If you're worried about people stealing your idea, don't be. It's very common, especially with first-time founders, to try and keep your idea secret, to not talk about it with anyone unless they sign a confidentiality agreement. I don't recommend this. By sharing, you'll get valuable feedback to sharpen and improve your idea. Think of it like a pre-mortem, figuring out what could go wrong before it goes wrong. The value you gain from these conversations will far outweigh the tiny risk that someone will try to steal your idea. In fact, the real risk is not that you share your idea and someone steals it, it's that you share your idea and no one cares. If your idea sounds so good to other people that they would want to copy it, almost certainly other people are already working on it. And if that's the case, you need to really believe that you are the best team to do it and will win anyway. If your idea doesn't sound good, but you secretly know that it is, other people just won't care. Second, remember that many good ideas look terrible at the beginning. They might be dismissed as being toys, but as Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator, wrote, when something is described as a toy, that means it has everything an idea needs, except being important. It's cool, users love it, it just doesn't matter. But if you're living in the future and you build something cool that users love, it may matter more than outsiders think. Google seemed like a nerdy science project and there were already a dozen other successful search engines. Facebook was a toy for college students to stalk each other. Airbnb was a way to stay on strangers' couches. They sounded bad, but they were contrarian and right. Lastly, the truth is, no one knows what ideas will succeed. We don't. We're constantly surprised when unexpected ideas become huge successes. You need conviction in your own beliefs, and you need to ignore the naysayers, while still taking advice from other smart people into consideration. It's a hard balance to strike. We've covered a lot in this video, and I hope it helps you get clarity on the idea that you want to work on for your startup. Don't forget to download a worksheet with a written summary of all the key points I covered. It'll help you go through this process and quantitatively compare ideas against each other. The next video in this series will dive deeper into forming your team, and it will appear here when published. If you didn't watch the overview video yet, check it out here. And if you're new here, this channel is about quintessence, where we go deep on the topics of business, spirituality, and life mastery. Subscribe and join us for the ride. And until next time, go deep.